Get your filthy hands off my son! Ethan Blackwell's voice sliced through the kitchen like a blade, his polished loafers slamming against the marble floor. He stormed in, tie loosened from a brutal board meeting, eyes blazing with contempt. Maya Johnson froze, her fingers hovering over a smear of mashed potatoes on Alex's plate, the 5-year-old boy wide-eyed in his high chair. Her dark curls clung to her sweat-dampened forehead, her apron stained with sauce. Ethan's gaze locked on her hands, bare, slick with food, feeding his son like some back-alley ritual. His lip curled. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Maya's jaw tightened, her pulse hammering in her throat. She set the plate down, deliberate, her eyes never leaving Ethan's. "I'm helping Alex eat, Mr. Blackwell." Her voice was steady, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the table. Alex, small and pale, clutched a stuffed dinosaur, his tiny fingers trembling. "Helping?" Ethan barked, cutting her off. He yanked a glass from the counter, water sloshing over the rim, and flung it at her. The liquid hit her chest, soaking her apron, dripping down her chin. Gasps echoed from the doorway where a maid lingered, unseen. "You're a maid, not a mother. You don't touch my son like that." His words dripped venom, each syllable a jab at her race, her status, her very existence in his pristine world. Maya's teeth ground together, her chest heaving as the water stung her skin. She wanted to scream, to shove the truth in his face, that Alex hadn't eaten a full meal in weeks until she tried this sensory technique, learned from her unfinished therapy studies. But Ethan's glare pinned her, his authority a wall she couldn't breach. "You think you're qualified to play doctor?" he snapped, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing her. "You're nothing but hired help." Alex whimpered, his dinosaur slipping to the floor. Maya's heart lurched, but she didn't move. Ethan's hand shot out, pointing to the door. "You're fired. Get out before I call security." His voice was ice, unyielding, the billionaire's power absolute. The maid in the doorway vanished, her footsteps fading. Maya's lips parted, but Ethan cut her off again. "Don't speak. Pack your things. Now." Her fingers twitched, itching to grab the plate and hurl it back, to match his fury with her own. Instead, she knelt, picking up Alex's dinosaur, her movements slow, deliberate. She pressed it into the boy's hands, her eyes soft despite the fire in her chest. "You're not nothing," she whispered to him, voice low enough to evade Ethan's ears. The boy's lip quivered, but he clutched the toy tighter. Ethan's fist clenched, his knuckles white against the counter. "I said out!" he roared, his voice shaking the glassware. Maya stood, her spine straight, water still dripping from her chin. She didn't wipe it. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Her eyes locked with his, unflinching, a silent challenge in the face of his rage. The kitchen clock ticked, each second a hammer on the tension. Without a word, she turned, her sneakers squeaking on the wet floor. She walked past the counter, past the gleaming appliances, past the life she'd built in this house. Alex's soft sob followed her, a knife in her gut. Ethan stood rigid, his breath heavy, watching her go. The door swung shut behind her, the sound sharp, final. But in his hand, unnoticed, Ethan gripped a crumpled napkin, smeared with Alex's food. Food the boy had actually eaten. His fingers tightened around it, a flicker of doubt cutting through his anger. Somewhere in the house, a faint rustle of paper. An old letter, half hidden under a stack of bills, whispered a secret that would soon unravel everything. Maya Johnson's sneakers squeaked against the hardwood as she strode out of the kitchen, water still dripping from her soaked apron. Each drop a stinging reminder of Ethan's outburst. Her chest burned, not from the cold splash, but from the humiliation. The weight of his words, filthy, nothing, cutting deeper than any glass could. Her hands shook, but she balled them into fists, nails digging into her palms until the pain steadied her. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not in this sterile mansion where every surface gleamed with judgment. In the staff hallway, she grabbed her worn duffel bag from the closet, her movements sharp, deliberate. The air was thick with the scent of lemon polish, a mockery of the chaos she'd just endured. She stuffed her spare scrubs inside, her fingers brushing the small, dog-eared photo of her mother tucked in the side pocket. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed it down, hard. Alex's soft sob echoed in her mind, his tiny hands clutching that dinosaur like a lifeline. She'd promised to help him, to make food feel safe again, not a battle. And now, because of Ethan's blind rage, she was being ripped away. She zipped the bag, the sound harsh in the quiet. Footsteps approached. Ruth, Ethan's mother, her silver hair pinned neatly, her eyes sharp but warm. "Maya," she said, voice low, urgent. "You don't have to go." Maya's jaw clenched, her teeth grinding until her temples ached. "He made it clear I'm not wanted." Her words were clipped, each one a blade she wielded with care. She met Ruth's gaze, unflinching. "I was helping Alex. He ate today, really ate, for the first time in weeks. I used sensory therapy, something I learned before I had to quit school. But Mr. Blackwell didn't care to hear it." Ruth's lips pressed thin, her hands folding tightly in front of her navy shawl. "He's a fool sometimes, my son, but he's not heartless." Maya's laugh was bitter, sharp as broken glass. "Could have fooled me." She slung the bag over her shoulder, the weight grounding her. "I'm not here to beg for a place I'm not trusted." She stepped toward the door but paused, turning back to Ruth. Her voice softened, but it carried a weight that filled the hallway. "Tell Alex he's stronger than he knows. Tell him to keep trying, even when it feels impossible. He deserves someone who sees him, not just his father's rules." Ruth's eyes glistened, but Maya didn't wait for a response. She pushed through the back door, the cold New York evening biting her skin through the damp apron. Her breath hitched, but she forced it steady, her steps firm against the gravel path. The estate loomed behind her, its windows glowing like judgmental eyes. She didn't look back. Inside, Alex's dinosaur lay forgotten on the kitchen floor, its plastic eyes staring blankly. Maya's words hung in the air, a prophecy Ruth couldn't shake. She bent to pick up the toy, her fingers trembling slightly, and tucked it into her pocket. The silence in the house was suffocating, broken only by the faint clink of dishes from the kitchen, where a maid scrubbed away the evidence of the fight. Maya reached the gate, her bag heavy but her resolve heavier. She'd given Alex a spark of trust, a moment where food wasn't fear. If Ethan couldn't see that, it was his loss, not hers. But as she stepped onto the street, the memory of Alex's smile, small, fragile, real, clawed at her heart. She gripped her bag tighter, her knuckles white, and walked into the night, leaving behind a truth that would soon demand to be heard. Ethan Blackwell stood alone in the kitchen, the silence deafening after Maya's departure. His pulse pounded in his ears, his knuckles still white from gripping the counter. The spilled water pooled on the marble, reflecting the cold glow of the chandelier above. Alex's high chair sat empty, the boy whisked away by a maid to avoid the fallout. Ethan's chest tightened, his breath shallow as the echo of his own words. "Filthy. Nothing." Ricocheted in his skull. His fingers twitched, itching to smash something else. But the fight had drained him, leaving only a gnawing unease. He paced, his loafers clicking sharply against the floor. The crumpled napkin from Alex's meal lay discarded near the sink, smeared with mashed potatoes and flecks of green beans. Food the boy had actually eaten. Ethan snatched it up, the paper crinkling in his fist. He hadn't seen Alex touch a full plate in weeks, not since the accident that took his mother, Eliza, and left the boy locked in a silent battle with food. Yet today, under Maya's care, he'd eaten. Ethan's jaw clenched, his teeth grinding until his temples throbbed. Had he misjudged her? He stormed to the security room, shoving the door open with a force that rattled the hinges. The monitors flickered, casting a sterile light across his face. He rewound the kitchen footage, his fingers stabbing the controls. The screen showed Maya, her hands gentle but precise, guiding Alex's tiny fingers to feel the food's texture before bringing it to his mouth. Her voice was soft, steady. "See, Alex, it's just food. It's safe." The boy's eyes, usually dull with fear, sparkled for a moment, his lips curling into a hesitant smile as he chewed. Ethan froze the frame, his breath catching. That smile, it was the first real one since Eliza's death. His stomach twisted, a sharp pang of doubt slicing through his anger. He'd thrown water in Maya's face, called her worthless, all because she didn't fit his rigid rules. His fingers tightened around the remote, the plastic creaking. He'd acted on instinct, on the gut-deep fear of losing control over his son's world. But the footage didn't lie. Alex had responded to her, not to the parade of therapists Ethan had paid fortunes for. He sank into the chair, his shoulders slumping. The room felt too small, the air too thick. He replayed the footage again, watching Maya's calm patience, the way Alex leaned toward her, trusting. His throat burned, not with rage, but with something heavier, regret. He'd been so sure she was reckless, dangerous. Now each frame mocked his certainty. On the desk, half buried under a stack of bills, a folded letter caught his eye. It was old, the paper yellowed, Eliza's handwriting scrawled across it. Ethan's heart lurched as he pulled it free, his fingers trembling. The words were faint, but one phrase stood out. Lucille knows more than she says. His brow furrowed, the cryptic note jarring, unrelated to the fight but heavy with implication. He shoved it into his pocket, his mind already spinning back to Maya's final words. He deserves someone who sees him. The weight of her absence settled like a stone in his chest. He stood, the chair scraping harshly against the floor. The napkin, still clutched in his hand, felt like evidence of his failure. Outside, the night pressed against the estate's windows, cold and unyielding, whispering of a truth he wasn't ready to face. But the seed of doubt had taken root, and with it, a question that burned. Had he just driven away the one person who could help his son heal? Ethan Blackwell's fingers gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale against the leather as he sped through the neon-lit streets of New York. The city's pulse thrummed outside, but inside his sleek Mercedes, the air was heavy, suffocating. His jaw clenched, teeth grinding until his temples pulsed. The security footage replayed in his mind. Alex's hesitant smile, Maya's steady hands guiding his son through a meal, her voice a lifeline in a world Ethan couldn't reach. He'd thrown water in her face, called her nothing, and now the weight of that napkin, still crumpled in his pocket, burned like a brand. He'd been wrong, dead wrong, and the realization clawed at his gut. He pulled up to the Blackwell Estate's gate, slamming the brakes. Ruth stood waiting, her silver hair glinting under the streetlights, her navy shawl pulled tight against the October chill. "You're going after her," she said, not a question, her eyes sharp as she slid into the passenger seat. "I don't know where she is," Ethan snapped, his voice raw, frayed at the edges. His fingers tapped the wheel, restless. "She could be anywhere in this damn city." Ruth's lips pressed thin, her hands folding tightly in her lap. "Start with the Bronx." She mentioned her mother's place once, on 142nd Street, near the community center. Her tone was clipped. No nonsense, but her eyes softened. "You owe her this, Ethan. You broke something tonight." He didn't answer, just floored the gas, the car lurching forward. The city blurred past. Honking taxis, flickering signs, faces that didn't matter. His mind churned, replaying Maya's words. He deserves someone who sees him. He'd seen her as a threat, a lowlife stepping out of line. Not as the woman who'd made his son eat for the first time in weeks. His chest tightened, a vice of shame squeezing his ribs. He'd built his empire on control, on never being wrong, but now his certainty lay shattered, and Alex's smile was the proof. The Bronx loomed ahead, its streets narrower, grittier, the air thick with the smell of fried food and exhaust. Ethan's polished world felt alien here, his tailored suit a glaring misfit among the cracked sidewalks and graffiti. He slowed, scanning the addresses, his heart pounding. Ruth pointed to a rundown apartment building, its brick facade peeling like old skin. "There," she said, her voice firm. "Third floor," she said once. He parked, his hands shaking as he killed the engine. The letter from Eliza, tucked in his pocket, pressed against his thigh. A nagging mystery he couldn't place. He pushed it aside, his focus razor-sharp on Maya. He climbed the creaking stairs, Ruth trailing behind, her steps slower but resolute. The hallway reeked of stale cigarette smoke, the walls stained with years of neglect. Ethan's fist hovered over the door marked 3B, his breath catching. What could he say? Sorry wasn't enough, not after what he'd done. He knocked and the sound sharp, echoing. No answer. He knocked again, harder, his knuckles stinging. The door cracked open, revealing a tired-looking woman, her face lined with years of struggle. Maya's mother. She's not here, she said, her voice wary, eyes narrowing at Ethan's suit, his well-screaming outsider. What do you want with my daughter? Ethan's throat burned, his words stumbling. I need to talk to her. I made a mistake. His voice cracked, the admission foreign, bitter. Ruth stepped forward, her presence calming. We're here to make it right, Mrs. Johnson. Please, where is she? The woman's gaze softened, but only slightly. She's at the community center, helping kids. Always helping, even after what you people do to her. The jab landed, and Ethan's shoulders stiffened, but he didn't argue. He nodded, turning back to the stairs, his pulse racing. The community center was a block away, its fluorescent lights spilling onto the cracked pavement. Ethan pushed through the doors, the hum of voices and laughter hitting him like a wave. Kids ran through the gym, their sneakers squealing, and there in the corner was Maya. Her apron was gone, replaced by a simple gray sweater, her hands guiding a young girl through a sensory game with textured toys. Her smile was warm, unbroken, as if his cruelty hadn't touched her. But her eyes, when they met his, were steel, guarded, unyielding. Maya, he said, his voice low, almost lost in the noise. She stood, brushing her hands on her jeans, her posture rigid. Mr. Blackwell, she said, her tone flat, cutting. What do you want? I was wrong, he said, the words spilling out, raw and unpolished. I saw the footage. Alex ate because of you. I didn't listen, and He stopped, his hands clenching, the napkin crinkling in his pocket. I need you to come back. Her lips parted, but no words came. The kids around her quieted, sensing the tension. Ruth stepped closer, her hand light on Ethan's arm, urging him to continue. Please, he said, softer now, his eyes locked on hers. I'm asking you to give me a chance to fix this. Maya's fingers twitched, her jaw tight, her silence louder than any shout. The weight of his apology hung between them, fragile, waiting to be tested. In her bag, unnoticed, a small notebook poked out, its pages filled with notes on Alex, notes that held the key to a truth far bigger than Ethan's mistake. Maya Johnson stood in the corner of the Bronx Community Center, the hum of children's laughter and squeaking sneakers filling the air. Her gray sweater clung to her frame, still faintly damp from the night's chill, but her focus was razor-sharp on the girl in front of her, a 7-year-old named Lila, her hands trembling as she touched a bowl of soft dough. Maya's voice was low, steady, a lifeline in the chaos. Feel it, Lila. It's just dough. It won't hurt you. Her fingers guided the girl's, gentle but firm, coaxing her to knead the texture, a sensory therapy trick she'd learned in her unfinished college days. Lila's shoulders relaxed, a small smile breaking through her fear. Maya's chest warmed, but the ache from Ethan's words, filthy, nothing, still burned beneath it, her jaw tightening as she pushed the memory down. She moved to another child, a boy with anxious eyes, offering him a textured ball to squeeze. You're doing great, Jamal, she said, her smile unwavering despite the weight in her gut. This was her world, not the Blackwell estate with its polished marble and cold rules. Here, in this cramped gym, with peeling paint and flickering lights, she was more than a maid. She was a healer, piecing together trust for kids who'd lost it, just like Alex. Her hands moved with purpose, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the ball, the sting of Ethan's water-soaked insult flashing in her mind. Around her, volunteers bustled, their voices a chaotic symphony of encouragement. Maya's mother, leaning against the wall, watched with quiet pride, her lined face softening. You're still out here even after that man's nonsense, she'd said earlier, her voice thick with defiance. Maya hadn't answered, just nodded, her teeth grinding until her temples pulsed. She wouldn't let Ethan's cruelty break her. She'd left his house, but not her purpose. Alex's face, his fragile smile as he ate, haunted her, but she channeled it into Lila's hesitant laugh, into Jamal's tightening grip. She knelt beside a table, helping a group of kids sort colored beads, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. Each child here carried their own wounds, trauma, neglect, fear of the world. Maya knew those scars too well, from her own years caring for her sick mother, from dropping out of college to pay the bills. Her fingers brushed a bead, and she remembered Alex's dinosaur, clutched tightly as she left. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed hard, her resolve ironclad. She wasn't done fighting, not for these kids, not for herself. Or a volunteer called her name, pulling her to a new task. She stood brushing her jeans and moved to a boy struggling with a sensory board. "Slow down, Ty," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "Feel the wood, then the cloth. Tell me what's different." Ty's fingers hesitated, then moved, his eyes flicking to hers with a spark of trust. Maya's heart lifted, but the weight of Alex's sob lingered, a shadow she couldn't shake. She'd given him a moment of safety, and Ethan had ripped it away. Her lips pressed tight, her nails digging into her palms as she guided Ty's hands. The gym door creaked, and she didn't need to look to know it was Ethan. His presence hit like a gust of cold air, heavy with wealth and regret. She kept her back to him, her focus on Ty, but her pulse hammered, her shoulders stiffening. The kids' laughter faded, their eyes darting to the suited man and his mother, Ruth, standing awkwardly in the doorway. Maya's fingers tightened on the sensory board, her breath shallow. She wouldn't turn, wouldn't give him the satisfaction of her attention. Not yet. But Lila tugged her sleeve, whispering, "Who's that man?" Maya's eyes flicked up, meeting Ethan's across the room. His face was raw, stripped of its usual arrogance, but she didn't soften. "Nobody important," she said, loud enough for him to hear, her voice ablade. She turned back to Lila, her smile returning, fierce and unbroken. In her bag, half hidden by her jacket, her notebook lay stuffed with notes on Alex's progress, pages that held the seeds of a truth she didn't yet know, a truth that would soon demand her return. Maya Johnson stood firm in the community center's gym, her eyes locked on Ethan Blackwell's, her pulse a steady drumbeat against her ribs. The air crackled with tension, the kids' chatter fading as they sensed the standoff. Ethan's suit was creased, his jaw tight, but his usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw edge of desperation. Ruth stood beside him, her navy shawl pulled tight, her gaze urging Maya to listen. Maya's fingers clenched the sensory board, her knuckles whitening, the sting of Ethan's thrown water still fresh, his words, filthy, nothing, a blade in her chest. She wouldn't bend easily, not after that. "What do you want, Mr. Blackwell?" Her voice was ice, each word sharp enough to cut. She stepped forward, closing the gap, her sneakers scuffing the worn floor. The kids watched, wide-eyed, as Lila clung to her sleeve, sensing the storm. Ethan's throat bobbed, his hands twitching at his sides. "I was wrong," he said, his voice low, rough, like gravel underfoot. "I saw the footage. Alex ate because of you. I didn't listen, and He stopped, his jaw clenching, teeth grinding audibly. "I'm asking you to come back. For him." Maya's lips parted, a bitter laugh escaping before she could stop it. "Come back?" She stepped closer, her eyes blazing, unafraid. "You threw water in my face, called me nothing, and now you want me to walk back into your house like it didn't happen?" Her voice stayed low, but it carried, each word a hammer striking steel. Ethan flinched, his shoulders stiffening, but he didn't look away. "I panicked," he said, his words clipped, urgent. "Alex hasn't eaten like that in weeks. I thought you were reckless, but I was wrong. I'm here to fix it." "Fix it?" Maya's teeth ground together, her chest heaving. "You don't fix trust with a car ride and an apology." She turned away, kneeling beside Lila, her hands steady as she guided the girl's fingers back to the dough. "You don't get to erase what you did." Ruth stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Maya, he's here. That's a start." Her eyes softened, pleading. "Alex needs you. You saw it. His smile, his trust. Don't punish him for Ethan's mistake." Maya's breath hitched, Alex's face flashing in her mind, his small hands clutching the dinosaur, his fragile smile as he ate. Her heart twisted, but her resolve held. She stood facing Ethan again, her posture unyielding. "If I come back, it's on my terms," she said, her voice steel. You learn about sensory therapy. You read the studies, you understand what I'm doing. And you don't ever interrupt me again without listening first. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his fingers twitching as if fighting the urge to argue. But he nodded, a sharp jerk of his head. Fine, I'll learn. You have my word. Your word means nothing until you prove it. Maya shot back, her gaze unflinching. She crossed her arms, her nails digging into her sleeves. And I'm not your maid anymore. I'm Alex's caregiver. Treat me like it, or I walk for good. The gym went quiet, even the kids holding their breath. Ethan's face tightened, but he didn't snap back. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulling out the crumpled napkin from the kitchen, its smears of food a silent testament. He ate because of you, he said, softer now, almost breaking. That's why I'm here. Maya's throat tightened, but she didn't soften. She nodded once. Sharp, final. For Alex, she said, her voice low, a vow. Not for you. As she turned to grab her bag, her fingers brushed a small notebook, half falling from the pocket. It hit the floor, pages splaying open. Ethan bent to pick it up, his eyes catching a scrawled note in Maya's handwriting. Alex, day 3, responded to texture, smiled, mentioned mommy's secret when eating. Ethan froze, his breath catching. He handed the notebook back, but his eyes lingered, troubled. What's this about a secret? He asked, his voice tight. Maya snatched the notebook, her fingers trembling slightly. He was rambling, she said, but her brow furrowed, the phrase echoing in her mind. She hadn't thought much of it then, just a child's chatter, but Ethan's reaction, his sudden stillness, made her pause. Ruth stepped closer, her eyes sharp. Eliza left something behind, didn't she? She said, her voice low, almost a whisper. She glanced at Ethan, then Maya. Maybe it's time we looked closer. Maya's grip tightened on the notebook, her pulse quickening. The air shifted, heavy with unspoken questions. The seed of a larger truth, hidden in Alex's words, in Eliza's letter, lay waiting, its roots already tangling in the shadows of the Blackwell estate. Lucille Harper's heels clicked sharply against the Blackwell estate's polished floors, each step a calculated strike. The kitchen, still heavy with the ghost of Ethan's outburst, buzzed with her presence as she swept in, her gray blazer crisp, her blonde hair pulled tight into a bun. Her eyes, cold and assessing, locked onto Maya Johnson as she arranged Alex's sensory therapy tools on the counter. Textured spoons, soft cloths, a bowl of rice for him to feel. Maya's hands moved with precision, her focus on the 5-year-old boy sitting quietly, his dinosaur clutched tight. But Lucille's gaze was a blade, slicing through the calm. You're back, Lucille said, her voice smooth but laced with venom, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Bold move after what you pulled. She leaned against the counter, her manicured nails tapping, each sound a jab. Maya's jaw tightened, her fingers pausing on a spoon, her pulse spiking. She met Lucille's stare, unflinching, her dark curls falling defiantly over her shoulder. I'm here for Alex, she said, her tone flat, cutting. Not for your approval. Lucille's laugh was sharp, a splinter of glass. You think you're indispensable now? She stepped closer, her shadow falling over the counter, her voice dropping to a hiss. You're digging where you don't belong, Ms. Johnson. Keep it up, and you'll regret it. Her eyes flicked to Alex, then back to Maya, a warning carved in her gaze. Maya's teeth ground together, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the spoon. The threat hung heavy, but she didn't flinch. I'm here to help him eat, not to play your games, she said, her voice low, steady, a shield against Lucille's venom. Alex's small hand reached for the rice, his fingers trembling, and Maya's focus snapped back to him, her warmth returning. Good job, Alex. Feel it first, okay? Lucille's lips curled, her nails tapping faster. You're too close to that boy, she said, her tone icy, accusing, and too curious about things that don't concern you. She straightened, smoothing her blazer, her eyes narrowing. I've kept this house running for 15 years. I know where the lines are drawn. You'd be wise to learn them. Maya's chest burned, the memory of Ethan's water-soaked insult mingling with Lucille's veiled threat. She wanted to snap back, to demand what Lucille was hiding, but Alex's soft hum grounded her. She knelt beside him, guiding his hand through the rice, her voice soft but firm. "You're doing great, buddy." Her eyes flicked up to Lucille, a silent challenge. "I don't cross lines. I help kids find their way back." Lucille's smile tightened, her fingers twitching as if itching to strike. "You're not family," she said, her voice ablade. "You're help, and help doesn't ask questions about the past." She turned, her heels clicking toward the door, but paused, glancing back. "Stay out of Eliza's things, or you'll find out how quickly this house can close ranks." The door swung shut, the sound sharp, final. Maya's breath hitched, her hands steadying Alex's as he scooped rice, his small smile a flicker of light in the tension. But Lucille's words echoed, tangling with the notebook's scrawl. Mommy's secret, and Ethan's troubled glance at Eliza's letter. Her pulse quickened, her fingers tightening on the bowl. What was Lucille guarding? Ruth appeared in the doorway, her navy shawl draped loosely, her eyes sharp with concern. She'd overheard enough, her lips pressing thin. "She's always been territorial," Ruth said, her voice low, steady. "But that was more than control. She's scared." Maya nodded, her throat tight, her mind racing. "Scared of what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced at Alex, his fingers now steady in the rice, his trust in her a fragile anchor. Lucille's hostility wasn't just about Maya's return. It was about something buried, something tied to Eliza, to Alex's trauma. Ruth stepped closer, her hand brushing Maya's arm. "We'll find out," she said, her tone resolute. "But be careful. Lucille's been here too long to let go easily." Maya's grip on the bowl tightened, her resolve hardening like steel. She wouldn't back down. Not for Alex, not for the truth. In her bag, the notebook lay heavy, its pages a map to a secret Lucille would kill to keep buried. The air in the kitchen shifted, charged with the promise of a storm waiting to break. Huyuri 3, Jutra and Leothang, Gem 8, Quatrina, Geotra, Dior 500. Two Maya Johnson's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages of her notebook, the scrawl of Mommy's secret burning under the dim light of the Blackwell Estates staff room. Her heart pounded, each beat a hammer against her ribs. The air was thick with the scent of old coffee and wax, the walls closing in as she sat alone at a scratched wooden table. Lucille's threat still echoed, "Stay out of Eliza's things." But Maya's resolve was iron, forged by Alex's small smile, by the trust he'd placed in her hands. She wasn't just a caregiver now. She was a hunter, chasing a truth that could free the boy from his silent prison. Ruth slipped into the room, her navy shawl slipping slightly, her silver hair catching the light. Her eyes were sharp, urgent, as she shut the door with a soft click. "Anything in there?" she asked, her voice low, glancing at the notebook. Maya's jaw tightened, her teeth grinding as she traced a line in her notes. "Alex, day 5, said Mommy hid something in the blue box during sensory play." Her pulse spiked. "He's been dropping hints," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "Kids don't lie about this stuff. There's something real here, Ruth." Ruth nodded, her hands folding tightly in her lap. "Eliza was troubled before the accident," she said, her tone heavy, eyes distant. "She'd argue with Lucille, late at night, when they thought no one was listening. I heard bits, something about keeping it quiet. Then she was gone." Maya's breath caught, her fingers gripping the notebook until the pages crinkled. Eliza's letter, the one Ethan had found, flashed in her mind. "Lucille knows more than she says." She stood, pacing, her sneakers scuffing the worn floor. "We need to find that blue box," she said, her voice a blade, cutting through the room's stillness. "And anything else Eliza left behind." They started in the attic, the air musty, thick with dust that stung Maya's nose. Boxes lined the walls, their labels faded, contents spilling like secrets. Ruth's hands shook as she opened a trunk, pulling out Eliza's old scarves, their silk soft but heavy with memory. Maya's eyes scanned the shadows, landing on a small chipped blue jewelry box tucked behind a stack of books. Her heart lurched as she grabbed it, her fingers brushing the cold metal clasp. Inside, a single key gleamed, its surface scratched but sturdy. No label, no clue. "What's this open?" Maya muttered, her voice tight, her pulse racing. Ruth's eyes widened, but she shook her head, clueless. Maya pocketed the key, her mind churning. "We need more," she said, her tone resolute. "Something Lucille didn't want us to find." They moved to Eliza's old study, a room Ethan had locked after her death, the key now useless in his grief. Ruth slipped a hairpin from her bun, her fingers deft as she picked the lock, the click sharp in the silence. Maya's lips twitched, impressed, but she said nothing, her focus razor sharp. The room was frozen in time, bookshelves lined with journals, a desk cluttered with papers. Maya's hands moved fast, flipping through Eliza's diaries, her eyes scanning for anything tied to Lucille, to Alex's trauma. A page caught her eye, dated a week before the accident. "Lucille pushed too far tonight. She thinks she owns this house, but she's wrong. I hid it where she'll never look." Maya's breath hitched, her fingers trembling as she showed Ruth. "Hid what?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ruth's face paled, her hands clenching the journal's edge. They kept searching, Maya's heart pounding as she pulled open drawers, her fingers brushing a hidden compartment under the desk. Inside was a small recorder, its tape intact. She pressed play, and Eliza's voice filled the room, shaky but clear. "If anything happens to me, it's not an accident." Lucille was there, arguing about the company shares. "She pushed Alex when he ran to me. He fell hard. I can't prove it yet, but she's covering something." The tape cut off, static crackling like a storm. Maya's chest tightened, her teeth grinding until her jaw ached. "She hurt him," she said, her voice a low growl. "That's why he won't eat. It's not just grief, it's trauma." Ruth's eyes glistened, her hands shaking as she gripped the recorder. "We need to tell Ethan," she said, but Maya shook her head, her resolve steel. "Not yet," she said, her voice firm. "We need proof he can't ignore. Lucille's too slippery." She tucked the recorder into her bag next to the key, her mind racing. They slipped out of the study, the house's silence oppressive, every creak a warning. Downstairs, Maya caught a glimpse of Lucille in the hallway, her eyes narrowing as she watched them descend. Maya's spine stiffened, her hand brushing the bag, the weight of the recorder grounding her. She thought of Alex, his small hands in the rice, his trust fragile but growing. Whatever Lucille was hiding, about the accident, about Eliza's death, it was tied to his pain. Maya's nails dug into her palms, her resolve burning hotter. She'd find the truth no matter what it cost. The key in her pocket felt heavier, its purpose unclear but pressing, a lock waiting to be opened, a secret ready to spill. Maya Johnson's hands shook as she clutched the recorder, its weight a burning truth in her palm. The Blackwell Estate's study felt like a tomb, the air thick with dust and secrets. Ruth stood beside her, her silver hair glinting under the dim desk lamp, her breath shallow as she gripped the edge of Eliza's journal. The tape's static still crackled in Maya's ears, Eliza's voice, shaky, desperate, replaying. "Lucille pushed Alex. She's covering something." Maya's jaw clenched, her teeth grinding until her temples pulsed. The pieces were falling together, and the picture was uglier than she'd imagined. She set the recorder down, her fingers steady despite the storm in her chest. The key from the blue box lay heavy in her pocket, its purpose still a mystery. But Eliza's words pointed to a betrayal deeper than a simple accident. Maya's eyes flicked to Ruth, whose face was pale, her hands trembling as she traced the journal scrawl. "Lucille was there when Eliza died," Ruth whispered, her voice barely audible, raw with realization. "She didn't just push Alex, she broke this family." Maya's pulse hammered, her mind racing. She grabbed the journal, flipping to the last entry, her fingers smudging the ink. Eliza's handwriting was frantic. "Lucille wanted control, threatened to expose my deal with the board. Alex saw it all. He fell because of her. I can't let her win." Maya's breath caught, her nails digging into her palms. The deal was vague, but the truth was clear. Lucille's argument with Eliza had spiraled, leading to Alex's fall, a trauma that locked him in fear, his refusal to eat rooted in that night. And Eliza's death, ruled a suicide, wasn't so simple. Lucille had covered her tracks, burying the truth to keep her place in the Blackwell empire. "She caused it," Maya said, her voice low, a growl of fury. Alex's trauma, Eliza's death, she's been playing us all. Her chest burned, the memory of Lucille's icy threat. Stay out of Eliza's things. Now a confession of guilt. She stood pacing, her sneakers scuffing the study's hardwood. That fall wasn't an accident. She pushed him, and Eliza couldn't live with the guilt. Ruth's eyes glistened, her hands clenching the journal until her knuckles whitened. We can't let her near him again, she said, her voice shaking but fierce. But Ethan won't believe this, not without more. Maya nodded, her resolve steel. She slipped the recorder and journal into her bag, her fingers brushing the key, its cold metal a silent promise. We'll find what it opens, she said, her tone sharp, unyielding. Something Eliza hid, something Lucille's terrified will uncover. Her mind flashed to Alex, his small hands in the rice, his trust in her a fragile thread. She'd fight for him, even if it meant tearing this house apart. The study door creaked and Maya's spine stiffened, her hand tightening on the bag. Lucille's shadow lingered in the hallway, her heels clicking faintly, a predator circling. Maya's pulse spiked, but she didn't flinch. She met Ruth's gaze, a silent vow passing between them. They'd exposed the heart of Lucille's betrayal, her role in Alex's trauma, her hand in Eliza's despair. But the fight wasn't over. Maya's fingers closed around the key, her heart pounding with purpose. Whatever lock it fit held the final piece of Eliza's truth, a weapon to bring Lucille down. The house's silence pressed in, heavy with the weight of secrets, but Maya's steps were firm as she moved toward the door, Ruth close behind. Outside, the night waited, cold and unyielding, but the fire in Maya's chest burned brighter, ready to ignite the storm that would shatter Lucille's lies. Maya Johnson's sneakers squeaked against the Blackwell Estate's kitchen floor, her heart hammering as she arranged Alex's sensory tools. Rice, textured spoons, a soft cloth for his evening session. The room was dim, the chandelier casting jagged shadows, but her focus was razor-sharp on the 5-year-old boy, his small hands clutching his dinosaur, eyes wide with trust. The recorder and key burned in her bag, hidden under the counter. Their secrets, Lucille's role in Alex's fall, Eliza's death, fueling her resolve. But the air shifted, heavy with threat, as Lucille Harper's heels clicked through the doorway, her gray blazer sharp as a blade, her eyes glinting with malice. "You're still here," Lucille said, her voice a low hiss, her smile a thin veneer over venom. She stepped closer, her nails tapping the counter, each sound a jab. "I warned you, Maya. You don't belong in this house." Maya's jaw clenched, her teeth grinding until her temples pulsed. She stood, squaring her shoulders, her dark curls falling defiantly over her apron. "I'm here for Alex," she said, her voice steady, cutting. "Not you." She knelt beside the boy, guiding his fingers to the rice, her touch gentle but firm. "Feel it, Alex. You're safe." Lucille's laugh was sharp, a splinter in the silence. "Safe?" She leaned in, her shadow swallowing the counter, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're digging into things that'll bury you." Her eyes flicked to Maya's bag, where the recorder and key lay hidden, and Maya's pulse spiked, her fingers tightening on the bowl. Lucille knew. Somehow, she knew. "You pushed him," Maya said, her voice low, a growl of accusation. "That night, with Eliza, you caused his fall, his trauma." Her words were knives thrown without hesitation, but Lucille didn't flinch. Instead, her smile widened, cold, predatory. "You think you can prove that?" Lucille stepped closer, her heels clicking like a countdown. "You're a maid, Maya. No one will believe you over me." She reached for the bag, her fingers grazing the strap, but Maya yanked it back, her heart lurching. "Back off," Maya snapped, standing, her body a shield between Lucille and Alex. The boy whimpered, his dinosaur slipping to the floor, and Maya's chest burned, her resolve steel. She wouldn't let this woman near him again. Lucille's eyes narrowed, her hand darting to the door. With a swift motion, she turned the lock, the click echoing like a gunshot. "You're done here," she said, her voice ice, her fingers pulling a phone from her pocket. "One call, and security will drag you out. Or maybe I'll say you stole something. Those earrings Eliza loved, perhaps?" Her smile was a blade, her threat a noose tightening around Maya's neck. Maya's breath hitched, her nails digging into her palms until they stung. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in. Lucille's power suffocating. She could scream, but who would hear? Ethan was upstairs, Ruth in her room, the maids loyal to Lucille. Her eyes flicked to Alex, his small frame trembling, and her heart steadied. She wouldn't break, not in front of him. "You won't scare me off," Maya said, her voice low, unyielding. She stepped forward, closing the gap, her gaze locked on Lucille's. "I know what you did, and I'm not stopping until Ethan knows too." Lucille's face twisted, her composure cracking. "You stupid girl," she hissed, her hand lashing out, shoving Maya hard against the counter. Pain shot through Maya's hip, the edge biting into her skin. But she caught herself, her hands gripping the marble. Alex cried out, a soft, panicked sound, and Maya's fury flared, white hot. "Touch me again," Maya said, her voice a low growl, "and you'll regret it." She straightened, her body taut, ready to fight. Lucille's hand hovered, then dropped, her eyes flickering with something new. Fear. But she recovered fast, her smile returning. Colder now. "You're playing a dangerous game," Lucille said, unlocking the door with a sharp twist. "This house keeps its secrets. You won't." She swept out, her heels clicking down the hall, leaving the air charged with menace. Maya's knees buckled, but she caught herself, her breath ragged. She knelt beside Alex, pulling him close, her arms a shield. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered, her voice soft but fierce, her fingers brushing his hair. His small arms clung to her, his dinosaur pressed between them. Her bag lay untouched, the recorder and key safe. For now. But Lucille's threat hung heavy, a storm ready to break. The kitchen clock ticked, each second a pulse of danger. Maya's eyes darted to the door, her mind racing. She needed Ethan, needed Ruth, needed proof that couldn't be buried. The key in her bag felt heavier, its lock still a mystery, but its truth was close. She could feel it. Lucille's power was crumbling, and Maya would be the one to bring it down. A4, Cao Trao, Kuoi Kung, GM. 11. Tem, Bang Chung, Kuoi Kung, 1 under 200. To Maya Johnson's heart pounded as she slipped out of the kitchen, her sneakers silent against the Blackwell Estate's hardwood floors. Alex was safe with Ruth, his small frame curled in her lap upstairs. But the weight of Lucille's threat, "You'll regret it," clawed at Maya's chest. Her bag hung heavy on her shoulder, the recorder and key inside like ticking bombs. Lucille's shove, the locked door, the venom in her eyes. It wasn't just control, it was desperation. Maya's jaw clenched, her teeth grinding until her temples throbbed. She had to find the final piece, the proof to shatter Lucille's lies before she could strike again. Ruth met her in the hallway, her navy shawl slipping, her silver hair loose from its bun. Her eyes were sharp, urgent, as she clutched Eliza's journal. "We don't have much time," she whispered, her voice low, fierce. "Lucille's on edge. She'll cover her tracks." Maya nodded, her fingers brushing the key in her pocket, its cold metal grounding her. "Eliza's tape said she hid something," she said, her voice steady, cutting. "The key's got to open it, something Lucille doesn't want us to find." Her mind raced, replaying Eliza's words. "I hid it where she'll never look." Her pulse spiked. "The basement," she said, her eyes locking with Ruth's. "No one goes there, not even Lucille." They moved fast, descending the narrow staircase, the air growing cold, damp, thick with the smell of mildew. The basement was a maze of crates and forgotten furniture, shadows dancing under the flickering bulb. Maya's hands shook as she pulled the key from her pocket, its scratches glinting. Ruth held a flashlight, its beam cutting through the dark, her breath uneven but resolute. "Start with the locked cabinets," she said, pointing to a row of metal storage units against the wall, their padlocks rusted but intact. Maya's fingers fumbled with the key, her heart hammering as she tried the first lock. It didn't budge. She moved to the next, and then the next, her breath hitching with each failed attempt. "Come on," she muttered, her voice a low growl, her nails digging into her palms. The fourth lock clicked, the sound sharp, echoing in the silence. She yanked the cabinet open, revealing a small, dusty safe inside, its dial worn but sturdy. Ruth's flashlight trembled, her voice tight. "That's Eliza's," she said, her eyes glistening. "She kept private things here, away from Ethan." Maya knelt, her fingers brushing the safe's cold surface. The key didn't fit, but a note taped to the side caught her eye. Eliza's handwriting faint. Code, Alex's birthday. Maya's throat tightened, her mind flashing to the boy's small smile, his trust in her. She spun the dial, 3-12-20, the numbers clicking into place. The safe opened with a groan, revealing a stack of papers and a USB drive, its label scrawled, "For Ethan." Her hands shook as she grabbed the USB, her pulse racing. Ruth handed her a laptop from a nearby crate, its battery barely alive. Maya plugged in the drive, her fingers stabbing the keys as the screen flickered to life. A video loaded, Eliza's face filling the frame, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice shaking. "Ethan, if you're watching this, I'm gone," she said, her words raw, urgent. "Lucille pushed Alex that night. We were fighting about the company shares. She wanted more control, threatened to ruin me. Alex ran to me and she shoved him. He hit his head. I covered for her, thinking I could fix it, but I can't live with the guilt. She's lying to you, to everyone." Maya's breath caught, her chest burning with fury. Ruth's hand gripped her arm, her nails digging in, her face pale. "She killed her," Ruth whispered, her voice breaking. "Not directly, but she drove Eliza to it." Maya slammed the laptop shut, her teeth grinding until her jaw ached. "This is it," she said, her voice low, fierce. "This is what buries Lucille." She grabbed the papers, legal documents showing Lucille's attempts to manipulate company shares, signed by Eliza days before her death. Her heart pounded, the truth a weapon in her hands. But footsteps echoed above, heavy, deliberate. Lucille's voice drifted down, sharp and commanding, speaking to a maid. Maya's spine stiffened, her eyes darting to Ruth. "She's coming," she whispered, shoving the USB and papers into her bag. Ruth nodded, her flashlight flicking off, plunging them into darkness. They slipped behind a crate, their breaths shallow, the air thick with tension. Lucille's heels clicked closer, stopping at the basement door. "Check every room," she snapped to someone unseen, her voice cold, predatory. "She's poking around where she shouldn't." The door creaked open, light spilling down the stairs. Maya's fingers tightened on her bag, the USB and key pressing into her side. Her heart raced, but her resolve was steel. She'd escaped Lucille's trap in the kitchen, and she'd outsmart her now. Ruth's hand squeezed hers, a silent vow. They waited, crouched in the shadows, the evidence burning in Maya's grip. The truth was theirs, but Lucille was closing in, her power a noose tightening with every step. Maya's eyes narrowed, her mind sharp, ready for the fight. The basement's chill wrapped around them, but the fire in her chest burned hotter, ready to ignite the final confrontation. Maya Johnson's heart slammed against her ribs as she crouched in the Blackwell Estates basement. The USB drive and papers clutched tight in her bag. The air was thick with mildew, the shadows heavy, but Lucille's heels clicked closer, each step a hammer on Maya's nerves. Ruth's hand gripped hers, her breath shallow, her silver hair barely visible in the dark. The basement door creaked above, Lucille's voice slicing through. "Find her. She's got something she shouldn't." Maya's jaw clenched, her teeth grinding until her temples pulsed. The evidence, Eliza's video, the documents, was a loaded gun, and she was ready to fire. The door swung open, light flooding the stairs. Maya's pulse spiked, but she moved fast, pulling Ruth toward the back exit, a rusted door hidden behind crates. Her sneakers scraped the concrete, her bag bouncing against her hip. Ruth's flashlight flickered, then died, leaving them in near darkness. "Go," Maya whispered, her voice low, fierce as she shoved the door open. They slipped into the garden, the cold night air biting their skin, the estate's lights glowing like judgmental eyes. Maya led Ruth to the dining room, where Ethan was hosting a small dinner for business partners, his voice drifting through the cracked window. She paused, her breath ragged, her fingers tightening on the bag. "We end this now," she said, her tone steel, her eyes burning with purpose. Ruth nodded, her hands trembling but resolute. They pushed through the side door, bursting into the dining room, the clink of glasses and murmurs halting instantly. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his suit crisp, his face paling as he saw Maya, dirt-streaked and defiant, with Ruth at her side. Lucille, seated near him, froze, her wineglass halfway to her lips, her eyes narrowing to slits. "What is this?" Ethan demanded, his voice sharp, his hands gripping the table's edge. Maya didn't hesitate. She yanked the laptop from her bag, slamming it onto the table, the USB already plugged in. "You need to see this," she said, her voice a blade, cutting through the room's stunned silence. Her fingers stabbed the keys, Eliza's video loading, her haunted face filling the screen. "Ethan, if you're watching this, I'm gone," Eliza's voice rang out, raw and trembling. "Lucille pushed Alex that night. She's lying to you, to everyone." Gas rippled through the guests, their eyes darting to Lucille. Her glass crashed to the floor, wine pooling like blood. "That's a lie," she shrieked, standing, her nails digging into the tablecloth. "She's fabricating this. Some cheap trick." Maya's teeth ground together, her chest burning. She slapped the documents down, the papers fanning out, proof of Lucille's share manipulation, Eliza's signatures damning her. "You wanted control," Maya said, her voice low, fierce, her eyes locked on Lucille's. "You fought with Eliza, pushed Alex when he got in the way. His trauma, her death, it's on you." Ethan's face crumpled, his hands shaking as he grabbed the documents, his eyes scanning the evidence. "Lucille," he said, his voice breaking, a raw edge of betrayal. "Is this true?" Lucille's composure shattered, her lips trembling, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. "You don't understand," she stammered, her voice rising, desperate. "Eliza was weak. She couldn't handle the pressure. I was protecting this family." "Protecting?" Maya stepped forward, her fists clenched, her voice a growl. "You broke Alex. You drove Eliza to her grave." She pointed to the screen, Eliza's face frozen in anguish. "You don't get to lie anymore." The room was silent, the guests' faces pale, their eyes wide. Ethan's shoulders slumped, his breath ragged. "You're done," he said to Lucille, his voice cold, final. "Get out of my house." Lucille's face twisted, her hands clawing at the air. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her eyes flashing at Maya, but her voice cracked, her power crumbling. She turned, her heels stumbling as she fled, the door slamming behind her. Maya's knees buckled, but she caught herself, her breath steadying. She glanced at Ruth, whose eyes glistened with relief, her hands squeezing Maya's arm. Ethan sank into his chair, his face buried in his hands, the documents scattered before him. The truth had gutted him, but it was free, and so was Alex. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, but the dining room felt lighter, the air charged with justice. Maya's bag hung heavy, the key still inside, its lock a mystery yet to be solved. But the storm was breaking, and she stood tall, ready for what came next. Maya Johnson stood in the Blackwell Estates dining room, her chest heaving, the echo of Lucille's retreating heels still ringing in her ears. The shattered wine glass lay in a pool of red, the documents and laptop on the table a silent testament to the truth unveiled. Ethan Blackwell sat slumped, his hands gripping the papers, his face raw with betrayal. The guests were gone, their whispers trailing out the door, leaving only Maya, Ruth, and Ethan in the heavy silence. Maya's jaw clenched, her pulse steadying, but her fingers trembled slightly, the weight of the confrontation sinking in. Ethan's eyes lifted, red-rimmed, meeting Maya's. "She's gone," he said, his voice low, broken, barely above a whisper. "I called security. Lucille won't step foot in this house again." His hands shook as he pushed the documents aside, Eliza's words, her video, her proof, burning in his mind. "She'll face charges, assault, fraud, whatever the lawyers can pin on her." Maya nodded, her throat tight, her teeth grinding as she held back the fire in her chest. "Good," she said, her voice steady, cutting. "She hurt Alex. She broke your family." Her eyes flicked to the hallway, where Ruth had taken Alex to shield him from the chaos. The boy's trauma, his refusal to eat, was rooted in Lucille's shove, in the night that stole his mother. Justice wasn't just Lucille's exile, It was accountability, a reckoning for the pain she'd caused. Ruth returned, her navy shawl loose, her silver hair framing a face etched with relief. "Alex is asleep," she said, her voice soft but firm. "He's safe now." Her hand brushed Maya's arm, a silent thank you, her eyes glistening. "You did this, Maya. You gave him back to us." Ethan stood, his shoulders heavy, his suit creased. "I should have listened," he said, his voice raw, his gaze locked on Maya. "I let her stay too long. I let my own rules blind me." He stepped closer, his hands twitching, as if fighting the urge to reach out. "This ends now. The lies, the cover-up. It's over." Maya's fingers tightened on her bag, the key and recorder still inside, their weight a reminder of the fight she'd won. "It's not just about Lucille," she said, her tone fierce, unyielding. "It's about Alex healing. That's what matters." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight, his eyes steady for the first time. "It will be," he said, a vow carved in his voice. The room felt lighter, the truth a blade that had cut through years of deception. Lucille's reign was over, her crimes laid bare, and the path to justice was set. But Maya's eyes lingered on the door, her heart already turning to Alex, to the work still ahead, to the promise of a future unshadowed by lies. HOI 5, Tai Thiet, und Disanjem, for 14, Han Jong Chuok Loi, Ki Molon, He Vong, 1000 on. To Maya Johnson stood in the Blackwell Estates garden, the late October sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Her sneakers pressed into the soft earth, her bag slung over her shoulder, the key and recorder now relics of a battle won. Lucille was gone, her crimes exposed, but the weight of Alex's trauma lingered, a quiet ache in Maya's chest. Her jaw clenched, her fingers twitching as she remembered his small hands in the rice, his fragile smile. She'd fought for him, but justice wasn't enough. Hope had to follow. Ethan Blackwell emerged from the house, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up, a man stripped of his armor. His face was haggard, the lines deeper since the dining room showdown, but his eyes held a new fire, not of anger, but purpose. He stopped beside her, his breath visible in the crisp air. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low, rough like gravel underfoot, "about what you did for Alex, for us." Maya's eyes narrowed, her posture stiff. "I did it for him," she said, her tone sharp, cutting. "Not for you." Her fingers gripped her bag, the memory of his thrown water still stinging, though his regret was clear. She wouldn't soften, not yet. He nodded, his jaw tight, his hands clenching at his sides. "I know," he said, his voice steady but raw. "That's why I'm doing this." He pulled a folder from his pocket, its edges crisp, and handed it to her. "Open it." Maya's brow furrowed, her pulse quickening as she flipped it open. Inside were blueprints for a community center in the Bronx, detailed plans for sensory therapy rooms, staff training programs, and a fund for underprivileged kids with trauma. Her breath caught, her fingers tracing the words. "The Alex Blackwell Healing Fund." She looked up, her eyes meeting Ethan's, her throat tight. "What is this?" "It's for you," he said, his voice firm, no trace of his old arrogance. "You'll run it. A center for kids like Alex using your methods. Sensory therapy, whatever it takes. Fully funded, no strings. I'm putting 10 million behind it to start." His hands twitched as if fighting the urge to say more. "I was wrong about you, Maya. About everything. This is me making it right." Her chest burned, her teeth grinding as she gripped the folder. The offer was huge, a lifeline for kids like Lila, Jamal, and Alex. But it came from the man who'd humiliated her, who'd seen her as less. "Why me?" she asked, her voice low, fierce. "You didn't trust me a week ago." Ethan's eyes didn't waver. "Because you saw Alex when I didn't," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "You fought for him when I was too blind to see the truth. You're the only one I trust to do this." Maya's nails dug into the folder, her heart racing. She thought of her mother, sick and struggling, of the college degree she'd abandoned, of the kids at the community center who needed more than she could give alone. This could change everything, not just for Alex, but for her community, for kids trapped in their own silent battles. Her lips pressed tight, her resolve steel. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady, commanding. "But I'm not your charity case. I run it my way, with people I choose." Ethan nodded, a faint smile breaking through, the first she'd seen without his usual control. "Your way," he said, a vow. "I'm learning, Maya, I promise." Ruth stepped out, her navy shawl loose, her silver hair catching the sunlight. She carried Alex, his small frame nestled against her, his dinosaur clutched tight. He stirred, his eyes finding Maya, and a smile, small, real, lit his face. Maya's heart lifted, her fingers loosening on the folder. She knelt, brushing his hair, her touch gentle. "Hey, buddy," she said, her voice soft but fierce. "We're gonna make things better, okay?" Alex nodded, his hand reaching for hers, his fingers warm, trusting. Ethan watched, his shoulders relaxing, the weight of his guilt easing just a fraction. "I'm selling off part of the company," he said, his voice low, resolute. "The shares Lucille was after. They're funding this. No more secrets, no more control." Maya stood, her eyes meeting his, a spark of respect flickering where distrust had been. She held the folder tight, its weight a promise, a future. The garden felt alive, the air lighter, charged with possibility. She thought of her mother, of the kids waiting in the Bronx, of Alex's smile growing stronger each day. This was her fight now, not just for one boy but for hundreds, a legacy born from the ashes of Lucille's lies. The sun dipped lower, casting gold across the lawn, and Maya's steps felt surer, her purpose clear. She'd build this center brick by brick for every child who needed it. And in her bag, the key, still a mystery, lay quiet, its lock waiting, a final thread of truth yet to be unraveled. Maya Johnson sat at the head of a long wooden table in the newly built Alex Blackwell Healing Center, the scent of fresh paint and cedar mingling in the air. The Bronx sun streamed through wide windows, casting warm light across the sensory therapy room, where textured toys and soft mats lined the walls. Her gray sweater was replaced by a crisp blazer, her dark curls pulled back, her posture commanding but warm. Across from her, Alex giggled, his small hands plunging into a bowl of colored beads, his dinosaur tucked beside him. His smile was brighter, steadier, no longer haunted by the shadows of trauma. Maya's chest swelled, her fingers steady as she guided his movements, but her heart still raced. The weight of the past months, Lucille's betrayal, Ethan's redemption, her own fight, etched deep. Ethan Blackwell stood at the room's edge, his tie loose, his face softer than Maya had ever seen. He watched Alex, his eyes glistening, a father learning to let go of control. Ruth sat nearby, her navy shawl folded neatly, her silver hair catching the light as she smiled at her grandson. The center's opening day buzzed around them, kids laughed in the hallway, therapists trained by Maya moved with purpose, and parents from the community whispered words of gratitude. Maya's mother, her face lined but proud, stood by the door, her eyes locked on her daughter, a quiet nod passing between them. Maya stood, her voice clear, cutting through the hum. "Alex, want to try the rice again?" she asked, her tone soft but firm, her hands offering a familiar bowl. The boy nodded, his fingers diving in. No hesitation now. Ethan stepped closer, his breath catching as Alex scooped a handful, his smile wide, unburdened. "He's eating," Ethan said, his voice low, raw with wonder. "Because of you." Maya's jaw tightened, her pulse steady, but she didn't look at him. "Because he's strong," she said, her eyes on Alex, her words a shield against Ethan's praise. She'd fought for this moment, through Lucille's threats, through Ethan's blindness, through her own doubts. The center was her victory, built on the ashes of Eliza's truth. Its rooms a promise to kids like Alex, Lila, Jamal. Her fingers brushed the notebook in her pocket, its pages now a record of triumph, not secrets. Ethan knelt beside Alex, his hand hesitant but gentle as he touched his son's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, buddy," he said, his voice breaking slightly. Alex looked up, his eyes bright, and leaned into his father, a small but seismic shift. Maya's throat tightened, her nails digging into her palms, but she let the moment breathe. Ethan glanced at her, his eyes steady, no longer clouded by arrogance. "I enrolled in a therapy course," he said, his tone quiet, earnest. "I'm learning, like you asked. For him." She nodded, her lips pressing tight, a flicker of respect breaking through her guard. "Keep going," she said, her voice firm, a challenge and a truce. She turned to Ruth, who handed her a framed photo. Alex's first day at the center, his smile captured mid-laugh. Maya's heart lifted, her fingers tracing the frame. "This is what matters," she said, her voice low, fierce. "Kids healing, families rebuilding." The room quieted as Maya's mother approached, her steps slow but steady. "You did this, Maya," she said, her voice thick, her eyes glistening. "You didn't let them break you." She pulled Maya into a hug, her arms strong, and Maya's chest burned, her resolve softening for a moment. She'd finished her degree in the past months, funded by the center's grants, her mother's health now stable. The fight wasn't just for Alex, it was for her own redemption, her own place in a world that had tried to cast her out. Ethan stood addressing the small crowd of staff and parents. "This center is Maya's vision," he said, his voice clear, carrying. "It's for every child who needs it, no matter where they come from. No more walls, no more secrets." His eyes met Maya's, a silent vow, and she nodded, her posture unyielding, but her heart lighter. He'd sold the shares Lucille coveted, redirecting millions to the center, and rewritten company policies to root out bias. The Blackwell name was no longer a fortress, it was a bridge. Maya stepped to the window, looking out at the Bronx street, where kids played under new streetlights, their laughter a pulse of hope. She thought of the key still in her bag, its lock never found, a mystery left behind, but no longer needed. The truth was out, and Alex was healing. Her fingers loosened, her breath steady, the weight of the past lifting. As the sun dipped, casting gold across the room, Maya gathered Alex, Ethan, and Ruth for a quiet dinner at the center's small kitchen table. Alex ate with a spoon, his movements sure, his smile bright. Ruth laughed, her hand squeezing Maya's, and Ethan watched, his face soft, a father reborn. Maya's mother joined them, her pride a quiet fire. The table was a circle, no hierarchy, no control, just a family forged in trust. Maya's eyes met Alex's, and she smiled, her voice soft but fierce. "You're unstoppable, buddy," she said, her heart full. The center hummed around them, a beacon for the broken, a home for the healing. The lesson was clear, carved in every laugh, every step forward. Trust and truth could rebuild what fear and lies had torn apart. Love, not control, made a family. And as the night settled, the future stretched wide, bright, unbreakable, a legacy Maya had fought for and won. Trust and truth can heal even the deepest wounds, forging families not by blood, but by love and courage. In The Billionaire Came Home Early, Maya's fight for Alex showed that overcoming prejudice and embracing hope can rebuild what fear destroys. What did this story spark in you? Share your thoughts or your own stories of resilience in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stay tuned for more stories that inspire. See you next time.